seeds, you're definitely going to get chili. You're not going to get chili plants from rice seeds. And you're not going to get happiness from negative karma. Never happens. So what is it? Because I don't like, and some of these things in this book I'm not quite happy with. And what is it that determines whether an action is positive or negative? It's negative if it produces a suffering result. It's positive if it produces a happy result. That's it. That's simply it. Now, positive actions. Okay, so there's a lot. Let's just carry on. The second characteristic. So the conclusion from this first one, that karma is definite, is try, since what we want is happiness, it's important to create the definite causes for happiness. And since we don't want suffering, it's important to avoid the causes that bring suffering. Second one, increase. Karma increases. So small action can bring huge result. And a small negative action can bring a huge suffering result, and a small positive action can bring a small, I'm going crazy now. A small positive action can bring a huge positive result. So what the Buddha did was he took an example from the physical world, and he gave the example of a seed. I think this is a banyan tree or a pipal tree. I can't quite remember. I think it's the banyan tree. Maybe somebody knows. Banyan tree, right? So he showed the seed, and it's a very, 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 very small seed. But when this seed has been planted and nurtured and grown, it becomes this huge tree, and then you can it can shelter many chariots underneath. So you can park a lot of cars underneath the branches for shade. So he said, just as in the physical world, a small seed can produce a huge result, much more so from the karmic point of view, a small seed put on the mind stream can produce much huger results. So small negative actions can have huge suffering results, and small positive actions can have huge happiness results. And the reason, the conclusion that comes from this is to avoid even the smallest negative actions, because we don't want suffering. And it might look very small, but if you disregard it, it can become a huge suffering result. And in a similar way, to try and create even small positive actions, because they can become huge happiness results. You have here, yeah, I put this up, do not commit any non-virtuous action. This is the Buddha's teaching summarized into 4. Do not commit any non-virtuous action, so don't do even the smallest. Perform only perfect virtuous actions, so even the smallest. Subdue your mind completely. That will come in a minute. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So those 4 lines are often put up as summarizing the essence of the Buddha's teaching. So the third one, we won't experience results if we don't create the cause. Okay, so karma not created won't be experienced. If you don't create an action, you won't experience the result. You know, if you want to boil an egg, if you want to have a boiled egg, you have to get the egg, and you have to put on the water, heat it up, put the egg in, and boil it for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. You know, whether you want it runny or you want it hard. Simply having an egg and a pan and water and sitting there praying, may I have a boiled egg, may I have a boiled egg, it's not going to do any good. You have to do something.
Somebody else can boil it.
Somebody else can boil it, but they also have, in order to boil it, have to do something. If somebody else comes and sits next to you and says, may you have a boiled egg, may you have a boiled egg, and you can invite a third person, may we all have boiled egg, may we all have a boiled egg. You can have a whole chorus of people in the temple, may all sentient beings have a boiled egg. But at some point, somebody's got to pick up that egg, boil the water, put the egg in. Right? So there's a certainty with here. If you want to have a result, You have to create the causes for it to happen. Things don't just happen without creating the causes. It's the same if you want a cup of tea. Boil the water, put it in the tea bag, add milk and sugar, however, you'll get a cup of tea. Simply wanting to have it and not creating the causes won't happen. So in a similar way with liberation, enlightenment. If you want to achieve liberation, if you want to be free from suffering, if you want to achieve enlightenment, there are causes, you have to do that. Without creating the causes, you won't get the results. Okay? But I don't want any more questions, so we won't get through the subject.
When you have a whole temple of people who are focalized 100% to get a boiled egg, you will get its result.
Okay. That's great. That's great. But it's much more practical.
Isn't it also...
It's much more practical just to boil the egg.
No problem. And this is what we lost. We are spreading, we have to focalize. Like
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're about.
So if you don't create the causes, you won't get the result. And in a similar way, if you're experiencing some kind of a result, you wouldn't be experiencing that if you hadn't created the cause. So you see, it goes both ways. So we have, and this is always extremely unpopular because people do not like to think that whatever they're experiencing, they created the cause to experience that for, but this is the law of cause and effect. So you take an example, group karma is a very difficult one, but let's just take a difficult example. You have, did you see just recently, Asiana Airlines? There was a crash in San Francisco.
Yeah.
The cause started. That's quite interesting actually. This airplane crashed on landing, and it was on landing, it crashed. And I think there were over 300 people on board. And wow, there might have been something like 150 or 200 were okay. They passed through immigration.
Only 3 died.
Yeah, 2 or 3
3 died, and there were maybe 100 or so injured. One of those who died didn't die in the crash. They were thrown out onto the runway, and the ambulance ran over them and killed them. Can you believe it? It's a fire truck ran over and killed that girl, and 2 of them died. They were right at the back of the plane. 2 of them died. Then there were maybe like 100 injured. And I'm very sorry this happened. I'm not treating this in any kind. I'm just trying to give you some example of how the Buddhist way of thinking, right? Then you have 200 who just simply walk through immigration. They can't pick up their bags. They don't go to the luggage and pick up their bags. But they were literally walking through immigration, tweeting, "I just landed in San Francisco. The plane crashed." They were like in a state of shock. Because normally we think in terms of, when a plane crashes, and if you looked at the wreckage of the plane, it's complete mess. It caught fire and it burnt up, it was all in cinders. But within those 300 people, so then you say, well, why would this kind of thing happen? And from the karmic point of view, you say, well, there's a group karma. There was a group karma to experience the plane crashing. But within that, not everybody created the cause to die. Some created the cause to be injured, and some weren't injured at all. When a group together does an action, but then within that group, there are different ways in which they participate in that action. Are you with me? And so you get different results. Some are with it, some are not. Okay, let's take another very unpopular example. America decides to go to war. What is America actually? It's very hard to know who's making the decisions these days. It seems to be the president. I'm not even sure if it's the president. I'm not sure who is making decisions in America. I'm an American citizen, so I'm not insulting America.
People with the money.
People with money. What is America? Anyway, America decides to go to war. It looked like it was George Bush, actually, who decided to go to war. So George Bush decides to go to war, and that particular case, the Senate and the House, I think they actually voted on it, and they agreed. So there's a semblance of democracy there. So the whole country, there's a group karma, because the whole country is going to war. But then within that, you had certain people who just couldn't wait for the fight. I mean, they're watching the whole thing, reality TV, and it's like the best entertainment, and they're really into it. Then you had another group of people who didn't really want to go to war, but after war was declared, it was very difficult not to support it because you were labelled and branded unpatriotic. Yeah, and many of the kids who were sent off to the front, they just simply signed up in the reserves, the army reserves, to get enough money to go through college, and they found themselves in the front line. And obviously, they didn't want to be sent off and having to fight. And then you have people who are completely against the war. So you have a whole group. Somehow there's a group karma because there is that country. There is that country has taken that action. But within that country, you can see so many different, some really positively supporting, some not supporting but, you know, going along, and some not supporting at all. Not supporting at all. So then you get different results. Can you understand that? It's going to be different results. Group karma is very interesting. If a group decides, let's say one person decides to, this is going to come up in a minute actually. Anyway, I'll just do it now. Let's say one person decides to kill a sheep and cook it to make a feast. One person decides to do that, one person does it, and the action is completed. One person gets the karma of killing the sheep. That one person killed the sheep, that person gets the karma of killing the sheep. Let's say a group of people get together and they all decide to have a feast, and they're going to kill a sheep in order to do it. The whole group gets the karma of killing the sheep. Let's say one person decides that they are going to build a hospital in a poor place to treat poor people. And they do it. That one person gets the positive karma, the virtue, of building a hospital. Let's say 100 people get together and say, this area really needs a hospital, let's do it. 100 people get that good karma. So when there's negative actions, whether you do it yourself or you involve other people, it's better to do it yourself actually. Because everyone who makes that decision gets the same amount of karma. And when it's a positive action, it's really good to involve as many people as possible. Because then the whole group. So when we do things like, decide to build a stupa or, positive things, we try to get a whole group and everyone just puts in 1 rupee or 2 rupees. Or people just rejoice and say, oh, that's really great, that happened. And everybody gets virtue.
Is own dynamic a subject in Buddhism? I don't know. Own dynamic?
I have no idea what own dynamic is. So remember this morning when I was talking about regret, and I said regret could be positive or negative, depending on the object. We have a similar phenomenon happening with rejoicing. If somebody does something negative, let's say you're watching on the news and you see that they just managed to, kill all these people or something, and you think, oh great, that's really, really good, then you're rejoicing in it, then you get this negative karma also. But if somebody does something positive and you rejoice, and you get the positive karma. So rejoicing can also be positive or negative. So if you do a negative action and you rejoice in it, it makes it much stronger. If you do a positive action and rejoice in it, it makes it much stronger. I'll give you an example. I had a friend of mine, he's a sheep shearer. He was actually a farmer in New Zealand, and then he stopped farming, became Buddhist, so he stopped farming. But he took up sheep shearing, and he's a Buddhist. He took up sheep shearing, cutting the wool off the sheep. So there'd be a whole gang of sheep shearers, and the work is very hard. And when they would finish work, when they finish at work, they'd have a whole feast, and there'd be a lot of Maoris involved, and people would get drunk, But he said the hardest thing for him was the rejoicing aspect. Like, they would be bragging about how, oh, I went fishing and I caught this huge fish like this, it was a beauty, yeah. Or they'd be hunting and rejoicing, going over and over and over and over again, how good it is. So then that just makes the action stronger and stronger and stronger. From our perspective, killing is a negative action. Then you rejoice in the fact that you're killing, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. But if you do something positive, and then you rejoice in it, the positive action gets stronger and stronger and stronger. If you let's say you give an offering to somebody, so you see someone, they need something, and you say, oh, here we are, let me help you, I'll give you this. And then you feel, well, that's really good, I'm really happy I could do that, it's great, I'm really happy I was able to do that. Then when you're rejoicing, not with pride, but just feeling happy you're able to do something positive, positive action gets stronger.
This is ego, no?
No, it doesn't have to be ego. If it's ego, then the action becomes negative. Giving to other people does not need to be ego. If you're like
This
up
is what
here,
happening.
huh?
You give someone and
Yeah,
you give to a bag of money,
yeah.
you wait for the thank you. This is what I see happen.
I didn't say you give something and wait for the thank you. It depends how you do the giving. If you give with the expectation, then better check up the mind that's giving. If you give thinking, oh, I'm superior to this person, here, I'll give you something. I don't even know if that's positive. I mean, yeah, the person gets something, but check your own mind whether you got something positive or not. If you see somebody, you think this person's the same as me, but they need some help, I can give them something, and you give, and you feel grateful to them for giving you the opportunity to be able to give. And you think, well, I'm really glad I had the opportunity to help somebody today.
But you feel good yourself, so it's a selfish doing.
Doesn't have to be. Please check up. Think of something good that you've done. And then think, I'm really happy I was able to do that. Does that have to involve your ego?
But you feel better after doing it, so if I knew that I would feel better, so...
Is that your motivation? Is your motivation for doing it to make you feel better?
Maybe deep down.
Okay, if your motivation for doing it is to make you feel better, then again I would say check up. But people don't necessarily always help and always do good things because it makes them feel better. Sometimes they do it because they genuinely want to help other people. I'm sure you have many actions like that. I'm sure you have many actions like that. Come on. You're a good human being. You are. I'm sure you've done many good things. Not necessarily because you wanted people to praise you, but just because I'm a human being, you're a human being.
Yeah, and you wanted to feel good with yourself also. You wanted to feel, I'm a good human being.
Yeah.
So you do good things. You
Is
want
that
to be
the
happy.
only reason why you do good things?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
but you're saying that in Buddhism, you learn Buddhism to become happy, and